by design, people crave comfort and will almost always choose consuming, which is normally directly related to comfort, over producing, which is normally related to putting in some effort, some energy, some failure. So what the government's doing is trying to ride that fine line between having enough producers that are willing to do the work and know the rules of the game to allow them enough money to keep the parasite-host relationship, as Nelson calls it, viable. The contract matters and the rules of the contract matter. So Nelson makes this very important point that whole life insurance with mutual companies is not, say again, is not a government-sponsored idea. It is not something that was created to solve a problem they started. It predates that. It is not uncommon for us to visit with someone who has no free cash flow a month and is giving the government a $400 to $1,000 loan a month. And it is packaged up in this pretty idea that I'm getting a lump sum of money at the end of the year, what's called a tax return. That is not free money. We are giving the government that money out of our earned income to hold for us so that we can get it back at the end of the year at a 0% loan to the government.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cashflow Legendz. As you can tell, we're missing one of our most important pieces to the team, Brock. I don't remember where Brock said he was today, but I can tell you, Nate, the Joker has been on the move, doing something, living out of a suitcase, it almost seems like, by design for months.
Yeah, when you're single, you can do that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very well said, Nate.
I don't, he's in a relationship, but he's not like married, all that stuff. So, but it makes it a little bit easier when you don't have dependents at home to be able to kind of pick up and go. We talked about this before. You and I have just decided at this stage in our life, we don't want to travel. We don't want to be away from home too much, if it's not with our family. And so we pick a few important dates out of the year that we prioritize. And, outside of that, we just have decided that we're not going to go to every conference that we get invited to.
Yeah. And what a blessing that I said this yesterday to you and today to somebody else. My brother said this to me years ago, and he probably got it from somebody else, but to remember to be grateful for the things that seem like stresses sometimes today that you used to pray for yesterday.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great reminder of, said this also today, that the devil gets us to focus on what we don't have, and the Lord calls us to focus on to be grateful for what we do have. And
no, go ahead.
No, you're right.
It just reminded me of something that I don't know if I don't know if it was an original thought or maybe I repeated it, but when you're having a bad day, someone else is praying for a day like yours. Be grateful. Like, you've got to keep perspective in what's going on.
Absolutely. All right, so let's parlay that into we're going through becoming your own banker. We've gotten a lot of feedback. Thank you for people listening, and it means a ton to us when you message me, Nate, or Brock, or you send us an email, or you put a comment in YouTube where you go, hey, this was really helpful, or hey, I didn't understand this. Would you mind expanding on it? We would talk about this stuff without recording, but it's been very humbling to be reminded that people are listening, and we do not take that lightly, because if we do anything well, we pray that our approach to what we share is genuine and it's vulnerable enough that that we don't have anything figured out, but that it also lets you know that time is your asset that's so valuable that you really don't control. And we love to think we do, but if we know the Lord as our Savior, every breath we have is a blessing from Him. So we've been going through becoming your own banker, and we mentioned last week that this next time we're going to talk about Willie Sutton's law. But I want to preface it with this, Nate. The longer that we have taught the infinite banking concept that Nelson Nash wrote about in Becoming Your Own Banker, the more we have realized that it is simple. You can practice infinite banking through any product. It just so happens that dividend paying whole life insurance is the best place to practice infinite banking and the process of becoming your own banker and putting them together. I had somebody today say, that insurance company's got to make money. And I said, you're exactly right. But Willie Sutton's law, which will connect the dots, it will help us realize the difference between a private contract where you're the first priority or a legal contract where everybody thinks they have a right to your stuff that you worked hard to obtain. And when Willie Sutton, the reason that Nelson spent the first half of the 92 pages of Becoming Your Own Banker, we believe from all of our mentors, talking about behavior and mindset, is because if we don't know what the problem is with the traditional way to think about money, then we will never really get clear on what the solution is. So Nate, what was the one-liner, I'll see if you'll go there, that Willie Sutton, a notorious bank robber in the 1900s from like 1901 to 1980, what did he say when he was asked why he continued to rob banks?
Because that's where they keep all the money.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? And so what Willie Sutton said, that's where they keep the money. Now, Nelson, what we've learned almost 8 years into doing this and hundreds, if not thousands of conversations, is Nelson wrote Becoming Your Own Banker in a way that he wanted you to get to thinking about how you think. So there's a lot of parable style writing, story style writing. But the longer we do this, Nate, it's so much fun to reflect back and think about what we thought 5, 6 years ago and that transition in thinking to today. Because if you connect what Willie Sutton's law is, that logically money is going to be kept somewhere, and that logically what's going on in the money world today has been occurring the same way and growing, maybe not in a positive way, since 1913. And you know what happened in 1913, then you begin to understand why Willie Sutton, even though he was a criminal or a thief, just decided to go to the most logical place where the money was kept. And when we understand that, that helps us understand, Nate, and I want you to touch on this, the simplification of, as Nelson said, our wealth has to reside somewhere, and what that means and how few places it could really reside. So why don't you touch on that before we dive into Willie Sutton's law?
Yeah, there's no getting around money having to be stored somewhere. It's got to be stored somewhere. And we've talked about this before. Like, we could put money under our mattress, but somebody could steal it. There could be a fire, or the reality is, if you factor in inflation, it's just going backwards. You can put money in a safe where maybe it's not as easy to be stolen. Maybe it's protected from a fire. But again, inflation is reducing the power of those dollars. So knowing those things, ideally we would want to put our money in a place that's going to be safe. And what we consider safe and secure in the financial world are things that we can see a very long, clear track record of success with, of safe and secure. And so running it through that filter, we have to evaluate all the different places where money could be held. And if we know that it has to go somewhere, then I would want it to go in a place where it is safe, it is protected, but it also has some positive growth, positive benefits of it being there. And so money has to reside somewhere. Money has to flow somewhere. So if money has to go somewhere and we're always going to be storing money somewhere, then naturally we would want it to be stored in the best place possible.
Yep.
Because you have to evaluate all the risk that's associated with where you're going to put your money.
Yeah, Nate, that's so well said. Let's try to separate emotion of what we think safety is and really just go to the simple thought of, and I use this example all the time, write down the environments your money is currently sitting, just on a piece of paper. Checking account, savings account, CD, qualified plan, under the mattress, wherever it is. And list the characteristics and the trade-offs and the rules of that environment. Because there's gonna be, and no way around it, there's gonna be trade-offs. If I put money under the mattress, it makes me maybe feel a little warm and fuzzy, but my house could burn up, or somebody could come steal my money out from my house, or inflation kills it. If I put it in the market in a qualified plan, I can't touch the principal, and all the people out there are going to start telling me ways you can. Yes, there are different ways to do different things, but as a whole, you're putting your money somewhere and you're waiting till a certain age at a certain environment that you don't know to access money that you don't know if you'll even live to the age of to get. And so when we realize that, now we're getting to the truth of what Willie said. I'm just going to bypass all that junk. I'm just going to go straight to the place the money is, and I'm going to get it. All right. So then Nelson makes this bold statement, and I don't want to offend anybody who loves the government, but he asks this question. And let me be very clear, being proud to be an American and being aware of how the government works and not loving all of that are two different things in my mind, because we live in the best country ever. I know that. So Nelson asked, who is the biggest thief in the world, Nate?
It's the IRS.
Yes.
They take more than everybody.
Okay, so let's break down the IRS in a very simple way, and then let's tell the story that he tells. Does the IRS produce anything that produces income for our nation?
No, not at all.
Okay. I was hoping you were going to say something, because I'm like, if they're just listening to this, I can't hear your head rattle.
Yeah.
No,
I
not
forget
at all.
about that sometimes. Like, not everybody's watching this. Somebody's just listening to it. So.
Yep, that's right. So not at all. All right. Do you think, Nate, that the government is so dumb that they don't realize they have to allow people to create something for them to be able to take it?
Yeah, you gotta make sure that there's something to take. The only way to take it is to allow production to occur. And what tends to happen is, as people get squeezed so much, eventually the incentive to produce is cut so much to where people don't want to produce. And so then they have to make adjustments. And, something Nelson talked about is, isn't it funny how governments create problems and then create solutions for the problems? When government creates a problem and then introduces a solution to the problem that they created, he says, shouldn't you just be a little skeptical of that?
Yeah. And Nate, it was an aha moment for me. I remember reading this the first time and having no clue, truthfully, having no clue of how money operated when that tax code 1913. I had no context of any of that. So if you don't either listening to this, that's okay. But the question is, and the point is that Nate's making, I think is so perfect, is if we believe something's the way it is long enough and it beats us down and it exhausts us and we don't think there's a way to win, we just accept it. And that turns us into almost always a consumer. And what government knows is that by design, people crave comfort and will almost always choose consuming, which is normally directly related to comfort, overproducing, which is normally related to putting in some effort, some energy, some failure. So what the government's doing is trying to ride that fine line between having enough producers that are willing to do the work and know the rules of the game to allow them enough money to keep the parasite host relationship, as Nelson calls it, viable. If you get too much pushback from the constituents, we the people, then they start solving problems they created. And this is where your 401k came from, your qualified plans, and the list goes on and on. Now, let's make this very clear to everybody listening. Nathan and I are not saying those things are bad in and of itself. What we are saying is if what you're already doing could be better, more certain, more controlled, with more peace of mind, is that worth exploring? And that's why Nelson was so adamant to get you to think about how you think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nate.
Well, I mean, we talk about this all the time related to infinite banking. You can still be a part of other investment strategies that are out there if that's what you want to do, but run it through the lens of infinite banking, maximize benefits and guarantees on your dollars, hedge against some of the risk that you're taking on for yourself. And you can still go do those things. But what we find often is, as Nelson said, when you know what the problem is, then you'll know what to do. As people really start, as we walk people through our process and they start really understanding what these financial products were made for, which was basically to incentivize behavior. And they realize that they are the product of the tax code by participating in these things. They realize that, hey, maybe I could do something a little bit different that gives me more peace of mind, that gives me more control. I just got off a call with somebody that just flat out told me, and I said nothing about his retirement account, but he said, if I could take it all out today and put it in whole life insurance, I would, but I can't even access it. I can't even do that. And, those are decisions that individuals are making on their own, that they're coming to the conclusion on their own with. We tell people all the time, this is not financial advice. We're not going to tell you what to invest in and what to do with your investment accounts or any of those things. We're just going to show you what we've done and what other people have done. And if you see the value in that, then we can teach you how to apply that.
Yeah, Nate, probably one of the most important pieces in my journey of infinite banking when we started and when Lee and I got on board and when we had great mentors who were willing to teach us because they were mentored by Nelson Nash personally, it was very clear that there was no telling us what to do. There was a constant, do you understand why this matters? Because if you don't understand, it doesn't matter what I understand. And I know you and I, Nate, and I think anybody we hang out with wants the flexibility to come to a conclusion on their own, which is why we built all of our processes around a lot of grace and patience and meeting people where they are if they want to keep learning. The only thing that we ever ask is, would you commit to just not stopping the process until you're certain you're no longer remaining in a place of lack of clarity or skepticism? Because that's all. Even if you get to the end of the process and it's like, this isn't for me, you're going to know why.
Yeah.
And you're going to be convinced of that. So
when we tell people often, I even said it today, there's no rush to create an IBC strategy. What we want to make sure of first and foremost is that your cash flow is in alignment with your values and the things that you love. We just want to make sure that you're moving towards purpose. And you have clarity in what your purpose is. And if that happens to be a whole life strategy, then that's great. But if not, that's okay too. We like to know that in any interaction that we have, that we're adding value to that person.
Yeah. So Becoming Your Own Banker was published in 2000. And we know David Stearns, who is Nelson's son-in-law, had a lot to do with that. He still does. Mike Everett and Chris Bay, who are original mentors that we still love and adore and talk to often, and then many of the other people in the community that live this and teach this. What we found is that Nelson wrote this to help us realize that this is not hard. It's not a complicated thing. If you really want to simplify it, you're just changing where your money goes to one place first before you do the things of life you're going to do anyway. And how and all the minutia, that's mechanics that have been around for hundreds of years. But it's been around for hundreds of years soundly. Nate, this is a side note, but I was reading a book by Barry Dyke. I don't remember the title of it. If you do, say it. Guaranteed Income.
Guaranteed Income, right here.
Okay, and we visited with Barry. He's an awesome dude, super sharp.
Barry Dyke, yep.
And so in there, and I'm paraphrasing, please look it up yourself, but it basically said the people that run the financial system connected to the market, people who have led our country in that area, like Ben Bernanke back in the mid 2010, 12, 13, 14, 15, the majority of their money, large majority, I think it's like 90% plus, is in assets like whole life insurance and annuities. Because they know that insurance companies that are mutual are experts at this. And so they're de-risking themselves from the things they know they can't control near as well with as much certainty and much guarantee. Yet they are the leaders of where majority of Americans believe that we have to put our money. Now you just let that sit in for a minute, and I'll parlay that into Frederick Bastiat, a French economist, early 1800s, Nelson said this, it's a part of a little thing he says, that the law can become perverted, but he says this: the law becomes the weapon of every kind of greed. All that means is that if you have the tools to control where all the money resides, greed takes over and tries to get it to where you keep more of that money. Back to who's the biggest thief. Now, Nate, I want to be sure I say this now. So if anybody's listening, they're not like, oh my gosh, this is beating me down. You know, there is a solution, but the piece that's so important is understanding, like you said earlier, understanding the problem to then get clarity on knowing what to do and why. And here's a piece that you and I have experienced, and many of others that we know that do this. When you know what the problem is and you know what to do, and you have something to compare it to that you've done before, it allows you to ignore a lot of the noise.
Yep.
And that's what Nelson was really trying to get us to understand, is that a lot of the things that we hear have billions of dollars of marketing behind them. And just because it's said loud, it's said often, and it's said consistently, does not mean it's true. But it becomes the truth the more people that do it. And so
yeah, it's really hard to fathom a time in history when income taxes were not a thing. But before 1913, there was no income tax law. And our country actually had surpluses in the national budget. You know, the world was getting along very, very well. But after this adoption, and now that the representatives in Washington have the ability to vote themselves a raise whenever they see fit, what we see is really the epitome of what Nelson was saying, Willie Sutton's law. Like the country was doing well. You know, there was money that people could see that money, they could see those surpluses, and they're like, oh, we got to do something about that. We got to get a piece of that. And so you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you find out how all those things came about, how the Federal Reserve was established, and all of that. And it was ultimately designed to steal and control the wealth.
So Nelson says this at the end of this section of the book. And Nate, I don't think this really registered till we started having the blessing of getting in rooms with people who have created generational wealth in the areas of things that matter to us the most, like being great stewards of their money and their time, and being great family men and women, and those kind of things. The contract matters, and the rules of the contract matter. So Nelson makes this very important point that whole life insurance with mutual companies is not, say again, is not a government sponsored idea. It is not something that was created to solve a problem they started. It predates that.
Yep.
And when you really think about that, if you just spend some time there, you begin to see how everything on this side of 1913 that is a byproduct of the tax code and a solution fixing a problem that they started, you begin to realize that by design, they have created us as the host and they are the parasite. And they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they got to find creative ways to feed that parasite. One of the reasons there was a surplus before 1913, and this is an educated thought, Nate, so call me on it if you think I'm off, is because government wasn't bigger than its constituents. It was a byproduct of what the constituents wanted just to keep order.
Yep. There was a substantial shift in power that took place as these things were established. And, as I read and learn more about Nelson, I don't identify as Republican or Democrat. I consider myself a free thinker. I am for limited government. I think that their government should be limited in their powers. And I think me and Nelson would probably gotten along really well in that thinking. But there is a sort of an analogy that he uses in this section to help understand why this has become permissible. Why did the country become okay with this and allow this to take place? And ultimately, it was because people who were not producing anything were getting something from people who were producing something. And the wealth is at the top. I mean, this is a common, I mean, this is an obvious statement. Wealth is at the top. So the majority of people are essentially benefiting from the people who are producing the most in the form of taxation, and it's being trickled down, and it's fed back to lower class through government programs. I don't know if you've ever come across someone like this, but I have. Someone who was low income that did not pay any federal income taxes whatsoever and still received a major tax break back. Like they got a tax return when they didn't even pay taxes.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So that is how this has, that's why there wasn't a mutiny, is because, and the example that Nelson uses is if you held somebody up at a shopping mall and you took their wallet, and a group of people around you saw that happen, and they would say, you just stole that guy's wallet. But Nelson said, if I gathered everybody together and I said, hey, I'm going to take this guy's wallet, but we're all going to share whatever's inside it. That is a very real analogy to what's taking place. And it's why it's so widely accepted. Even though people grumble about it, it's why it was allowed to be accepted, because the majority of people were seeing some sort of benefit. I mean, on both sides, like this is just a common everyday thing that you hear in the media about taxing the wealthy, taxing the rich. Don't let the billionaires get don't let the billionaires get a tax break. Everybody needs to pay their fair share. Like all this stuff. Like you hear that narrative, and it is perpetuated among the masses, because if it wasn't for those who have all the money, who are actually, where the taxes are coming from or whatever, then there's a lot of programs that wouldn't exist.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't even get into the fact that our government spends money they don't even have.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come after us for the bill.
Yeah.
They spend money we don't have, and then when it comes time to pay the bill, they come chasing us down saying, hey, you got to pay this bill. Like somebody steals your credit card and runs it up, and the credit card company comes to you and says, hey, we know somebody stole your credit card, but you owe this money, which most people have credit card protection, fraud protection, things like that. But that's the reality of what's happening. And so, man, there's so many layers to this that we could probably talk about for a long time. But the thing that I have enjoyed so much about this series so far is it has forced us to have conversations in depth about these topics that we've never had before.
Yeah. Nate, let me connect the dots on something that we see often when we're working with people. So when we get to work with somebody, they have read or they're reading Becoming Your Own Banker. So these thoughts are churning in their head already, and they're trying to make sense of it, because a lot of the things Nelson says, you're not taught in school. Now, I'll let you figure out why that is and use your own thinking. All right. But here's another one. It is not uncommon for us to visit with someone who has no free cash flow a month and is giving the government a $400 to $1,000 loan a month. And it is packaged up in this pretty idea that I'm getting a lump sum of money at the end of the year, what's called a tax return. That is not free money. We are giving the government that money out of our earned income to hold for us so that we can get it back at the end of the year at a 0% loan to the government. And here's what I figured out, and why Nelson was so wise about behavior, Nate, and why he talked about it all the time. What is usually the problem with that people don't even realize until you ask them, is they don't know what they would do with it if they got it monthly. And they would rather just spend it when they get that lump sum at the end of the year for something that they enjoy, called consumerism. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but the minute you start introducing them to a better way to flow that money through your life, to where it stays in your life and it stays in your kid's life and it stays in your generational values, then people begin to go, well, why the heck would I give the government a 0% loan for 12 months? And that's a really good question. And it's because the government is really good at making us believe the behaviors they want us to believe that allow them to continue to be the parasite.
Yeah. And one more layer to taxing the rich and everything like that is when you tax the producers, that's a tax on the consumer, because the tax is passed down to the consumer. So a tax on the rich is also a tax on the poor. A tax on the rich is really a tax on the poor. Like it's going to be like, they're smart enough to know that they'll get somebody else to pay the bill.
100%.
And so you have to understand what's going on across the board and understand really both sides to how all those things work.
Yeah.
And there's really more than two sides to all of that. I mean, there's so much complexity
by design
in what's really happening. Exactly. It's all by design.
So Nate, here's something, we'll end with this. And this is a challenge to everybody listening. And I would love to have a conversation about it, because Nate and I don't think we've got everything figured out. This week we got corrected on something we were saying that the intentions were correct and good, but I was missaying it. And so we have to be willing to be called out. I have several people that I know that are constantly on how billionaires this and billionaires that, without ever asking how they became billionaires and why they are billionaires and how they got there. When in reality, it's shucking or pushing off the responsibility of being the best version of yourself as a creator that you can be. Because what you and I know is the devil gets us to focus on the things we don't have. The Lord calls us to focus on the things we do. And our ability to think and understand and grow and connect and have fellowship allows our thinking to be challenged, to be refined, to be improved, to be applied. What most Americans, 80%, let's say, believe, going back to the arrival syndrome, is this as good as it's going to get. This is the way it is. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you believe that, that breaks Nate and I's heart, but you still have an opportunity to learn something different. And it has nothing to do with money. Money is just a byproduct of the condition of our heart and how we use it. Rabbi Daniel Lapin said that in Business Secrets from the Bible, but it's so true. So if you think that the big man's out to get you and Uncle Sam's going to do nothing but hold you down and you can't get ahead, they got you right where they want you. Because they know you're not only going to do that and live that life your entire life, you're going to pass it on to the next generation. Nate, there's a reason that the Israelites wanted to go back even when they were working on getting their freedom to the promised land. Is because comfort is a cage. Consuming is comfort. And if we consume all the time, people have us right where they want us, the government, any other thing. So Willie Sutton's law, why did he say I'm a bank robber and I'm good at it? Because that's where they keep their money. So that's encouragement to all of us to think about, where do you keep your money? What are the rules of where you keep your money? Do you like the rules of where you keep your money? And is there some rethinking? So next week, Nate.
Let me add one more layer to this before we go. We talk about this all the time through our process. When there is liability or negligence in play, let me put it this way. Every 32 seconds, there is a liability claim filed in the United States. The average claim filed is $1.8 million. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in most states, whole life insurance is a protected asset. So it's just one more place where money can be held and can be judgment proof, so to speak, can be creditor protected, things like that. So that's just one more layer to this whole idea of, when people have money, somebody's going to try to get it. And there's insurance scams and all kinds of other stuff that's out there. But ultimately, it's just important to understand why whole life insurance can be such a valuable asset for you and such a valuable place for money to be held. Just another layer of protection that you can have for it. So anyways,
that's good. It. All right. So next week we'll be talking, or the next time we do the book walk, we're going to be talking about the golden rule. He who has the money makes the rules. And that'll pair perfectly with Willie Sutton's law. And here's the cool thing. There is a different way to do things, to think about controlling the rules. And that'll be what we talk about. We hope this was valuable to you. At the minimum, we're so thankful you shared your time with us, and we hope we encouraged you to think about how you think. We hope we challenged you in a way that you go, that makes me uncomfortable because I believe this. That's how you get out of the it's as good as it's going to get arrival syndrome, is you're willing to have your thinking challenged to come back with why you believe this way, or to get clarity on where we are wrong. And that's okay. Nate and I have been through that journey. We go through it every day, and we try to realize that that's a thing we need to fight every day, is that we've never arrived. There's always something new to learn, and it's all the Lord's doing. So till the next time, we hope you have a great day, and we're very grateful that you like, subscribe, and watch what we do and listen.